Okay, let me begin this one with an apology. My voice may sound a little raspy. Picked up something at the grocery store about a week ago. It's mostly over. It's still sitting in my sinuses, so I sound a little odd. But what I wanted to talk about this week are organizers. And these organizers are 3D printed ones. There is a huge gallery of these types of things. Some make a honeycomb wall. Some do a honeycomb wall with magnets. There's Gridfinity and Gridfinity with magnets. There's honeycomb wall with Gridfinity. And all these do is give you the ability to put things in a space appropriate for them. So you're no longer trying to fit something into somewhere it doesn't really fit. For example, I'm a photographer. I've got USB SD readers. I've got mini SD cards. I've got SD cards. They all are different sizes and need their own little space, if you will, that would be specific just for them. For example, those mini SDs are flippin' tiny. They are so easy to lose. And being able to create an organizer specifically to that size so that you can just slot them in makes life a lot easier. Printing a honeycomb wall, right, which looks exactly as it sounds. It's just a honeycomb shape. Shelves have a reverse honeycomb that allows you to slot them in the back. And so you can put shelves on it, or you can put little clamps in there so that you can put on the pliers and things. But let me give you an example of something that you just have to make. For example, I've already talked about the ability of making a new piece for my actuators. The actuators I've got are not rated for outdoor. However, the reason they're not is they can't take rain. But I don't need them to take rain if I can create something that goes over the motor, still allowing it to breathe, but at the same time protecting it from the rain. So I did. I have a coffee cup that is larger than normal size on the base. It's so big, in fact, that I don't have any coasters that will actually allow it to sit comfortably in there, or sit on the coaster and have the coaster take up the entire bottom part to it. So I created a simple print that allows me to put that coffee cup in there, and at the same time has a rim around it to protect it from, come summer, right? If it sweats, the water won't go anywhere. Which has always been a problem for me with most coasters, is if they don't have that recessed area to it, when you're put a drink in there that's wet because it's sweating, the water can go anywhere. But what I needed for my house was a way of organizing some of my electronics. So I found this cabinet that I could print that was Gridfinity inside. It's stackable, and it allows me to put a couple of trays on there, and the trays are just the right size to put an SSB or a USB SSD drive in there, okay? They work very nicely. However, I didn't like the main design. And the thing I didn't like about it was the grid itself that you were setting things into wasn't very useful to me. And here's why. The shelf itself had a cross pattern on it. So it had heft to it. The grid just sat on top of it. And that's where I had the problem. The grid just sat on top of it. It wasn't a set that was set up with magnets, which I wouldn't use in this case. But there was no way to lock it into place. What I did was I took a Gridfinity pattern, a base pattern, took the STL of the shelf that I was using, and merged them into one unit. So that my shelf now has the Gridfinity permanently as part of the shelf. Keeps it that rigidity, but now the damn thing won't slide, right? So when I put the tray in there, the tray just drops into place. Nothing's going anywhere. So I have about 3 or 4 USB hubs in use, right? I have a lot of USB devices. My PC has 3 USB PCI 3s on it, or 3 USB 3s on it. And then I've got some USB 2s. I've got about another 2 to 4 USB 2s. But I want to use USB 3 for its throughput. But I only have 3 of those. I have a lot of USB drives. So in order to handle that, I have multiple hubs, right? Typical of a lot of environments. The computers on the older side now, it's about 4 or 5 years old that I built this computer. And USB 3 was just coming out, so not all of the ports were USB 3. Not all of them were USB 3, USB 2 compatibles. So I can plug in my port of my hubs, but now I've got hubs all over the table, right? So first I had all these USB drives that were scattered around, and now I've got these hubs. So what do I do about them? The hubs that I built this for are TP-Link hubs. It's not a perfect situation to it, and that is I could have put a wall in, but I really didn't want to. Now here's the problem with a hub. If you look at a normal Gridfinity tray, they're tall, right? If you look at a normal hub, they're not. The TP-Link ones have 2 USB-C 3 connectors on the side that can be used to power something. In the longer part, the front of this rectangle, are all of the slots that come in from the side for your different USB devices. On the back is a plug for power and a plug for the USB cable to go to the computer. In addition to that, on the top is a power button, right? So in order for this to work, I have to be able to reach in and hit the power button. I have to, if I want to, and I haven't used them yet, but I might need to at some point, be able to plug into those USB-Cs on the side. I've got to plug all my stuff into the front, and I got to plug into the back. So what I did was I cheated a little bit. I could have made this a little bit more specific, but I wanted to make something that other people could use. It's a little bit more generic. So as you're looking at it from the front, you've got all of your USB connectors staring at you. On that left-hand side, I left the wall intact. All right, so if you push against it, the farthest it can go is to slide up against that wall and go nowhere else. In the front, you can slide everything in, and because the wall is so much lower, you can just slide those things in. They're not going to be lifted up because of that setup. USB-Cs, again, the wall there is virtually non-existent on that side, so you can just slide them in. The back is the same way. There is a little bit of a tray left so that it's not going to flip off, it's not going to slide off. I then created a connector for each of the 4 corners that allows me to take a post and put it in. So my goal here in the design was to create something that was in pieces because it makes it easier to print, right? I don't have to worry about supports. If it's something that needs to be assembled, I don't have to worry about what supports your slicer might create. You can, if you want to, attach the posts permanently to the tray. The next level above that first tray is a Gridfinity panel. All right. Again, posts on the bottom side of it. I put a flat bottom to this sucker so that it's got a solid piece to it. Even though the stuff isn't very heavy, I have to account for the fact that those cables are going to hang. So even though that there's no weight on them, you've got the weight of the cables themselves I want to adjust for. So the 4 posts from the bottom, put those 4 little posts in, take your panel, put this on top, slide it down on top. So you've got your first unit in place and ready to go. Put this on it, lift up that next unit, put it on top of another tray that mirrors the bottom one that you put into this Gridfinity. The Gridfinity part is what's attached to the tray below it, not the next tray. That's why I said if you wanted to, you could attach the Gridfinity part and the tray together and then do the same on the next set. I'm going to have 3 levels. So at the top level, you're just going to have a panel that's just, or a tray that's going to sit into the Gridfinity panel. So in order to assemble a 3-level, you need a top tray, 2 stacking trays, 2 Gridfinity panels, and 8 posts. Simple as that. You can throw them on your printer and let them go. I have a 220. The size of these is such that I can only print one of anything except for the posts at a time. I can't put 2 trays on there. They're 3x5s. They're too big to go on there. And again, these are 3x5 Gridfinity trays. These are good size trays. So not only can I put the hub on there, I have room if I want to leave a drive or 2 right there with the unit. So I don't have to worry about extra storage for my USBs. I'm going to create extra storage for my USBs, but I could leave it there. So if I wanted to swap something in and out, for example, I could do it. If I have a reader, for example, they're just going to be a little bit too big. Some of my readers, a couple of my readers will fit just perfectly on that tray. So I can actually put a SD card reader right on the tray with the USB hub and have it hook right to the USB hub and have everything just in one spot. Again, this will be 3 high. It's a 3x5 grid. My posts are 70 millimeters. So with the tray heights and everything else, let's say 80 millimeters from in height, with another 80 millimeters on top of that, taking up just the 3x5 space. So it'll allow me to put this off to the side and stack all my USB hubs. They still have all the air around them that they would normally have, right? They aren't constrained because I don't have those walls real tight. So they can still breathe. They've still got everything where they need to be, and they're stacked so that they're taking up less space. So when you get into 3D printing, one of the first things you're going to want to do is come up with some way that you want to organize things. Something that you can't just go buy. I mean, if you can go buy it, just go buy it. But I've never seen anything like what I've designed for my SSD drives or for my USB hubs, or even for that matter, for my little coaster for my coffee. I just haven't seen anything. Now, I could be wrong. There could be some out there, and I just haven't run across them. But the whole point, if you're going to get a 3D printer, is to think about what you would print with it to justify having it. Now, the reason I say justify it, it's going to take up space. It's going to require electricity. It's going to require supplies. It's not something that you just sit there and hit a button and everything magically is going to work. You're going to have to go find something, or you're going to have to go design something. And to that end, we'll talk some more next week about what I use to design these things and how I go about doing it. And that'll be next week's podcast. But that's what I got for you guys this week, and I will talk to you all next week.